Hi everyone, this is just a quick video to help you answer question 3 on the paper 1 GCSE EDUQAS English language exam. So question 3, first thing it tells us are our line numbers. Make sure you highlight them so you know which line numbers you need to look for, and it's line 14 to 57. Let's have a look at the question. What impressions do you get of Mason and his wife Miriam in these lines? Okay, now a couple of things to highlight here. Not only Mason, but his wife, Miriam. So we've got two characters that we can look at now. Again, you must refer to the language used in the text to support your answer using relevant subject terminology where appropriate. That's just to remind you that you need to make sure that you quote. For every impression you write of Mason or his wife Miriam, a quote must support it. It's also a 10-mark question now. So we've gone from 2 5-markers to a 10-mark question. What does that mean? That means we need to write more, but it also means we get a little bit more time to do that in. For this question, I would recommend that you spend about 15 minutes. So for question 3, because it's 10 marks, 15 minutes, because remember, you've got to write down 8 points supported by 8 different quotes. That would be a really good target to aim for. Perhaps we could make 4 points about Mason, 4 points about Miriam. Maybe we could talk about their relationship and how they interact together, or we could talk about them as separate people. Okay, it doesn't specify, so actually we've got quite a lot of scope there. So the first thing we need to do is we need to read line 14 to 57. What I'm going to do as well is I'm going to find line 57, and I'm just going to underline it so that I know I can't go beyond that one. Okay, so line 14. I saw the sea again last night, he told his wife at breakfast. Mason, the nearest sea is 1,000 miles away, Miriam said quietly. She watched her husband for a moment, her pale fingers straying to the coil of black hair lying against her neck. Go out into the drive and look. There's no sea. Darling, I saw it. Mason! Miriam's voice suddenly became loud. Mason stood up and with slow deliberation raised his palms. Miriam, I felt the spray on my hands. The waves were breaking around my feet. I wasn't dreaming. You must have been, she said quickly, leaning against the door, as if trying to exclude the strange night world of her husband. Mason, you must see Dr. Clifton. You're beginning to frighten me. Mason smiled. I shouldn't worry. What's happening is really very simple. At night, I hear the sounds of the sea. I go out and watch the waves in the moonlight, and then come back to bed. He paused. Tall and slimly built, Mason was still convalescing from the illness which had kept him at home for the previous 6 months. It's curious, though, he resumed. The water is remarkably luminous. I should guess its salinity is well above normal. But Mason, Miriam looked around helplessly, her husband's calmness exhausting her. The sea isn't there, it's only in your mind. No one else can see it. Mason nodded, hands lost in his pockets. Perhaps no one else has heard it yet. The first visions of the sea had come to Mason only 3 weeks earlier, but he was already convinced of their absolute validity. He recognized that after its nightly withdrawal, the water failed to leave any mark on the hundreds of houses it submerged, and he never once felt frightened for the people in those houses as he watched the luminous waves break across the rooftops. Despite this paradox, it was his complete conviction of the sea's reality, and that had made him admit to Miriam that he had woken one night to the sound of waves outside the window and gone out to find the sea rolling across the neighborhood streets and houses. First, she had merely smiled at him, but 3 nights later, She had woken to the sound of him latching the door on his return, bewildered by his pummeling chest and perspiring face. From then on, she spent all day looking over her shoulder through the window for any signs of the sea. What worried her as much as the vision itself was Mason's complete calm in the face of the terrifying unconscious apocalypse. When he went to bed that night, Mason found Miriam sitting fully dressed in the armchair by the window, her face composed into an expression of calm determination. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Waiting." "For what?" "The sea." "Don't worry, simply ignore me and go to sleep. I don't mind sitting here with the light out." "Miriam, Mason took one of her slender hands and tried to draw her from the chair. "Darling, what on earth will this achieve?" Mason sat down at the foot of the bed. For some reason, not wholly concerned with the wish to protect her, he wanted to keep her from the sea. "Mason, you're taking all this so calmly. You accept this vision as if it were a strange headache. That's what frightens me. If you were really terrified by the sea, I wouldn't worry, but..." Half an hour later, he fell asleep in the darkened room, and Miriam's slim face watched him from the shadows. Okay, so let's quickly remind ourselves of the question. What impressions do we get of Mason and his wife Miriam in these lines? And it's lines 14 to 57. Now we've got quite a bit now to work with. So remember, we need to track through that text from beginning to end of the lines, and we need to try and take our points from everywhere, not just the beginning, not just the middle, not just the end, but tracking through it. So if we look at line 14, which is here, isn't it? "I saw the sea again last night," he told his wife at breakfast. "Mason, the nearest sea is 1,000 miles away," Miriam said quietly. She watched her husband for a moment, her pale fingers straying to the coil of black hair lying against her neck. "Go out into the drive and look. There's no sea." Okay, the first thing that I want to highlight is this. When people play with their hair, it usually implies that they're nervous. And I think Miriam's a little bit nervous. She's worried about Mason. I also get the impression that she doesn't believe him, just from the first line. The nearest sea is 1,000 miles away. It also says that she says that quietly. She also says, "Go out into the drive and look, there's no sea." Now, I'm not going to use every single one of these quotes, but I am going to use maybe one or a couple of them. I'll start you off with one, and then I'll let you carry on. So the first one I've got there is Mason, the nearest sea is 1,000 miles away. So that's the one I'm going to use. So on the question paper, as we did before, I'm going to start with, firstly, I get the impression Miriam doesn't believe Mason. He says he's seen the sea, as she states. I'm just going to check my quote to make sure it's exactly. Mason, the nearest sea is 1,000 miles away. And that's my first point. Then for my next one, if I could spell today, I would start secondly, and I will go on to make my next point. Remember, because this is a 10-mark question, we want about 8 different points supported by 8 different quotes. If you can do more than that in 15 minutes, that's amazing. 8 is your target. Remember, you can talk about both Miriam and Mason, but we cannot go beyond the lines stated, so only up to line 57. So what I would do, I would set a timer on your phone for 15 minutes. Remember, question 3 is a 10-mark question. Give yourself 15 minutes to answer it.